10 above. Snowy and breezy on Monday with a temperature of 5 to 10 above. Might even fall through the day. We are expecting at least 6 inches of snow from this storm between Sunday night and Monday.
It's time for Top Story on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Here's Brian O'Neill.
Good morning. We're on live this morning, and our guest is Assemblyman Bill Nojay. This week in the news, looking over the top stories, the Livingston County Sheriff's Department identified the body of 1979 Jane Doe in Caledonia as Tammy Jo Alexander of Florida. Friendly's restaurant in Hornell closed their doors. St. James Hospital announced they're selling Macaulay Manor to a company called Post-Acute Partners, and St. James Hospital gave hundreds of employees their 90-day notice. It was announced by the U.S. Attorney's Office that State Senator Dean Skelos will be investigated for corruption. Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver says he's going to step down from being the Speaker on Monday night. Silver stays in the State Assembly but won't be the Speaker anymore. On to talk about these and other issues, Assemblyman Bill Nojay. Assemblyman, thanks for joining us live this morning.
Well, thank you for having me.
Assemblyman Nojay, Time Warner Cable News says that Silver steps down Monday night. That was in a report from Nick Reisman. You're in the State Assembly. What can you tell us here?
The world came crumbling down for Sheldon Silver a week ago Thursday when he was arrested by the FBI in New York City over corruption charges. There's a 35-page complaint filed against him by the federal prosecutors that details two schemes. One involving kickbacks from a law firm for referrals that where the pump was primed by $500,000 of state grant money to a doctor in New York City, a Columbia University doctor. So the doctor got $500,000 for his research efforts, and then the doctor referred his cancer patients to Sheldon Silver's law firm, and Sheldon Silver gets a piece of the legal fees. The other one is the much more troublesome scheme that Silver is in trouble for and resigned over, which is a real estate property tax credit arrangement where rich New York City real estate developers got tens and tens of millions of dollars of property tax abatements, and they just happen to be the same people who put millions of dollars in the pockets of Democrat campaign coffers, a lot of that orchestrated by Sheldon Silver. So those are the allegations against him. You know, you're innocent until proven guilty, but you read the 35-page complaint, it doesn't look good. So it took a while. It took about 48 hours for the Democrats out of New York City to actually read the 35 pages and realize that their leader, Sheldon Silver, was up to his eyebrows in trouble. And then the walls started coming down. It took a week for them to coalesce around the next candidate, but it's going to be Carl Heastie will be the replacement for Sheldon Silver. I mean, aside, anything can happen in the next 72 hours, but I fully expect that by Tuesday you're going to have a new Speaker of the State Assembly. His name is going to be Carl Heastie. He hails from the Bronx. He's a bare-knuckle brawling Bronx politician, fairly soft-stated and a very smart guy. But on the other hand, you don't become Speaker of the New York Assembly by being a Boy Scout in New York politics. So he's largely unknown, but we're going to see what he's all about starting Tuesday.
Carl Heastie, a Bronx Democrat, to take over for Assembly Speaker Sheldon Silver. For Silver just to leave the Speaker's post but stay on the Assembly, is that good enough considering all the federal charges against Silver?
Well, what it does is nobody really cares at this point. What it means is a member of the Assembly, he's going to be stripped of his staff, stripped of his committee chairmanships. He's going to be like the rest of us, just sitting in a chair with the right of a vote. So it effectively removes Sheldon Silver from involvement. He still does have a chair in Albany. He can still vote if he wants to. I don't know if he's going to bother to show up. And we'll see where it goes. But the power in Albany, arguably the most powerful man in New York State politics, is the Speaker of the Assembly because of the influence they have in the Speaker's office over the state public education system, key appointments throughout state government, in addition to effectively controlling all legislation that flows through the state legislature and gets to the governor's desk, that will be Carl Heastie of the Bronx.
Moving on to the Dean Skelos situation. Dean Skelos is a Long Island Republican, a state senator, the head of the state Senate Republicans, and Preet Bharara this week. Preet Bharara, the U.S. attorney who brought down Sheldon Silver. Preet Bharara announced this week that his next investigation is going to be about State Senator Dean Skelos. Assemblyman Nojay, on your radio show, you've been highly critical of both Silver and Skelos. So first question here. Are you the one who's leaking all this info about Silver and Skelos and their scandals to the U.S. Attorney's Office?
No. After the SAFE Act was passed 2 years ago, I said I'm not going to rest until the three guys responsible for the SAFE Act are gone. Sheldon Silver, Dean Skelos, and Andrew Cuomo, the governor. And we're now one down, two to go, and I would love to see Skelos bounced out of the state Senate. I've called for his resignation over a year ago. I called for Skelos to resign as the Republican leader, and which did not endear me with some of my Republican friends. But he is he's one of these people. I don't know if some of our listeners have ever heard of the Peter Principle. The Peter Principle says you continue to go through life and keep getting promoted in things until finally you get promoted to a job that you're incompetent at. And that's Dean Skelos. He was a great local party hack out on Long Island. He was arguably even a decent state senator from Long Island. But once Joe Bruno left the state Senate and Skelos became the Republican leader and took on statewide responsibility, he has just dropped the ball and messed things up in more ways than you can count, including the SAFE Act, including putting upstate New York and cities like Hornell at the short end of the stick every budget cycle. And we would all be better off without Dean Skelos. Having said that, I don't take credit because I did not do any leaks to anybody. I'll tell you what's happening. The federal prosecutors got all the files from the Moreland Commission that was set up by the governor a couple of years ago and then abruptly shut down last summer. And the prosecutors literally backed a truck up to the office building that housed the Moreland Commission staff, loaded up all the files, and carted them away. And they've got, of course, the investigative authority, subpoena power, and whatnot, not only of the U.S. Attorney's Office, but the FBI working with them. And that's heady stuff. I mean, that's big stuff. When somebody walks into your office from the FBI and essentially says, we can do this the easy way or the hard way, we need to find out what you know, that puts enormous pressure on sort of the lower tier players, and they're the ones who start talking. We don't know what the federal prosecutor knows. We're only going to find that out. I'll tell you who's doing the leaking. There's somebody in the federal prosecutor's office leaking to the New York Times, because that's where the stories have been coming out about first Andrew Cuomo and shutting down the Moreland Commission, and then the Sheldon Silver arrest. It was a week ago Wednesday, that about 10 o'clock at night or midnight when I saw it, that the story came out about Sheldon Silver's imminent arrest on Thursday. And so there's somebody leaking, but the leak is actually out of the U.S. Attorney's Office. And it certainly isn't me. I know what I read in the newspaper and hear on the radio, as they say.
All righty. And you don't think that there is a deep throat as far as who's leaking the information? You did say there is someone leaking information to the New York Times, but no one is leaking information from the Assembly or Senate, as far as you know, about Dean Skelos and Sheldon Silver to the U.S. Attorney's Office.
Well, it is the federal prosecutors and the FBI are, I presume, I don't know this. I mean, I have no special information, but I presume that they are using their subpoena power. If you lie to a federal agent, that's a felony in itself. Don't underestimate the intimidation power of being questioned by federal investigators. It tends, people that think they're tough guys and good at keeping their mouth shut about political gossip, all of a sudden, when you're asked a question by an FBI agent sitting across the table on the record under penalties of perjury, people have a remarkable pattern of telling what they know. This guy Preet Bharara is a pro. He sort of falls in the tradition of Rudy Giuliani and other great federal prosecutors. Frankly, I think if he ran for office in New York State tomorrow, he could be elected to anything he wants to be, including governor or senator or anything else. So he's developing quite a name for himself, and we'll see where this leads. But it's certainly, and as Brian, as you and I have talked before, the crimes that Sheldon Silver are charged with on these real estate deals, he cannot commit alone. That legislation giving these rich New York City real estate developers tens of millions of dollars of tax benefits, tax credits and whatnot, has to be passed by the Assembly with the approval of Sheldon Silver. But it also has to be passed by the state Senate and has to be signed by the governor. And you always follow the money. Both the Democrats in the Assembly, the Republicans in the Senate, and the governor's political campaign that raised $40 million, the bulk of it from the New York City Real Estate Committee. These guys are hardcore business guys. They don't give money to Andrew Cuomo because of his charm and good looks. They expect something in return. The only question is, will the federal prosecutor and the FBI be able to get enough information to pursue criminal cases against anybody other than Sheldon Silver? We're going to find out.
A longtime name in the state Senate is State Senator Kathy Young. She was very instrumental in getting the Republicans reelected in the New York State Senate campaigns back in this past November. Do you think if Skelos has to step down, that Senator Young might possibly take Dean Skelos' place?
Well, that's an inside decision in the Senate. Kathy is from our area, upstate New York here. She's not a New York City person. She's not a Long Island person. There's a tremendous, just like in the Assembly, we're now electing somebody that nobody outside the Assembly or New York City politics has ever heard of. Probably less than 1% of New Yorkers have ever heard of Carl Heastie, and he's being elected though because of his New York City. The Bronx is a major player, one of the big powerhouse Democrat bastions, and similarly in the state Senate. The Republicans have a lot of sway in upstate New York, but there's also a strong Long Island delegation. I think Kathy Young would be a great leader for the Republicans. She has never been tied to any kind of corruption. She looks out for the interests of upstate New York. She did a terrific job last year in orchestrating the Republican take-back of the state Senate, getting 32 seats for majority control. It's only by one seat, so it hangs in the balance with every heartbeat. But I don't know if Kathy would be in one of those top leadership positions, including the majority leader. But I can only hope, because I think she'd be great in that kind of a role.
Will there be trials for Skelos and Silver?
Well, Silver's been arrested, so there's pretty clearly going to be a trial, unless there's some sort of a plea.
That's what I was going to ask. Will he get out of it?
See if there's if the federal prosecutor pursues an arrest, or possibly a plea. I mean, who knows? It can go in any number of directions. I'm always cautious talking about a criminal matter involving somebody who has not even been formally accused yet. And I think all of us, and there's this media feeding frenzy over the last 48 hours about these rumors about Dean Skelos. I've urged caution on this. I don't think it's fair. As I said earlier, I called for Skelos to resign.
Yeah, you're one of his harshest critics.
I've been one of his harshest Republican critics, but I will not accuse him of doing things that he has not even been accused by a prosecutor of doing. I think it's unfair to him. I think it's unfair to the process.
I did have one other question. The New York Post says Skelos is laughing off the reports about him. Other media outlets downstate are reporting that Skelos is calling the whole NBC report on him irresponsible. Do you get a sense that the Skelos accusations and apparent investigation by the feds will go as far as the Silver ones?
Well, one of the problems you've got with a federal investigation is not only do you not know where it's going, but you don't know when it's going there. The arrest of Sheldon Silver was a huge surprise. Nobody saw that coming, with the possible exception of Sheldon Silver himself. I think probably had an inkling of it, before his actual arrest 2 Thursdays ago. But nobody else knew it. I don't think the governor knew about it. I don't think anybody else in the assembly was aware of it. So you knew that he was under investigation, but investigations can take weeks, they can take months, they can take years. I think what Dean Skelos is doing by issuing a fierce pushback on the rumors and the press reports the last couple of days is he's trying to preserve his ability to govern the Senate. The ability to govern and to manage a staff, to commence the legislative negotiations, the budget process, depends upon Skelos' ability to command authority. And part of that is legal authority, but part of it is also what the political scientists call moral authority or apparent authority, which is the presumption when you walk into the room. Here's a way to put it, Brian. When you walk into the room, what are the other people in the room thinking about you? Are they thinking there is the man with the gavel and with the power to move the agenda at this meeting? Or are they thinking there's a man who's about to be indicted, who the bottom is dropping out on his authority? He really doesn't have the ability to get anything done anymore. Dean Skelos needs to avoid that second perception about him. And he's going to do that by taking a strong, aggressive posture, pushing back, and which is what Sheldon Silver did, by the way, until, if it happens, there is a federal charge.
In Friday's New York Times Online, the New York Times called for Governor Andrew Cuomo to do something about the corruption in state government. Now, considering that the governor shut down the Moreland Commission, which investigated state legislative corruption, which the New York Times alleged that Cuomo did because it was getting too close to comfort for Cuomo. The New York Times concluded their editorial yesterday by saying that restoring public trust should be at the top of the governor's agenda. Can the governor do that now?
I don't see how he does. I think the governor, you think, I'm going to try to be non-political when I answer this, but let's take a look at the governor's career back to his earliest days as a young man in his early 20s working on his dad's campaign. Andrew Cuomo has used every dirty trick in the book politically. When his dad was running against Ed Koch, the eventual mayor of New York City, but they were running against each other for mayor, Andrew Cuomo was allegedly the guy that started plastering up posters all around New York City saying, "Elect Cuomo, not the homo," because of the allegations that Ed Koch was a homosexual. And Ed Koch never forgave Andrew Cuomo for that, by the way. It was never possible to prove it, but pretty much everybody knows it, that it was Andrew Cuomo. That's how he started his career. And then every step of the way, the words Andrew Cuomo and corruption have never been far apart. And this current investigation into these New York City real estate developers, if you look at the ties between the real estate developers that got tens of millions of dollars of tax deals, credits, tax credit, property tax abatement, sometimes up to 94% of their property taxes were forgiven. And who was responsible for that? Sheldon Silver in the Assembly got the bill through the Assembly. The Republicans got the bill through the Senate. And Andrew Cuomo signed the bill. How can somebody who is got a lifelong professional history of sloshing around in this cesspool of corruption in Albany have any credibility when it comes to ethics reform. And worse, when he said he was going to pursue ethics reform by appointing the Moreland Commission, he's now got the distinction of running the only anti-corruption commission in America that itself is under investigation for corruption. I mean, so do I think Andrew Cuomo is serious about ethics reform? Absolutely not, because the best predictor of the future is the past, and there is a 30-year history of Andrew Cuomo wading in the cesspool of corruption of New York State politics. So, I mean, I guess I could be surprised, but the past is certainly not encouraging.
Question, can Zephyr Teachout, Cuomo's former Democrat opponent in the governor's race, can Zephyr Teachout make a comeback now because of the whole mainstream media would likely, most of them, be behind her?
Well, it's too late for her until the next gubernatorial cycle. I don't think she was a serious candidate. She couldn't raise money. Zephyr Teachout, no, I don't see her anyplace back on the scene. I'll tell you who's going to be an interesting person to watch is Kathy Hochul. Kathy Hochul hails from Buffalo. She's now the lieutenant governor. She's proven herself as a very effective campaigner. We'll see how she does in her job as lieutenant governor. But certainly if Andrew Cuomo gets into trouble as a result of these federal investigations, people are going to start asking, who is Kathy Hochul and what would it mean if Andrew Cuomo ever had to step down? We're a long, long way from there. I mean, there have not even been any charges against Andrew Cuomo yet. But looking at the long-term radar, the long-distance radar out there on the horizon, I would look in Democratic politics at Kathy Hochul as a potential statewide candidate. Eric Schneiderman has always presumably wanted to be governor, but he's also been tarnished by this whole Moreland Commission scandal because he was, along with the governor, appointed the Moreland Commission. I'd also keep an eye on Bill de Blasio, the mayor of New York City. He clearly has ambitions, policy ambitions, that go way beyond New York City. And whether that means statewide or going directly to a national influence or national candidacy, we'll have to find out.
We're down to 2.5 minutes here. We're talking with Assemblyman Bill Nojay here on Top Story. Assemblyman, final question, a local question. The St. James Hospital situation. The latest is this week, hundreds of St. James Hospital employees were given their 90-day notice. Your thoughts?
I think it's a disgrace that Governor Cuomo has allowed this to happen. It's a decision of the health department in Albany in terms of how health services, medical services are provided across New York State. Here we have a governor who has spent over $100 million on those stupid television ads all around the country, basically creating a foundation for his own presidential campaign with taxpayer dollars, having the gall to then turn around and, for lack of a few $1 million, shutting down hospitals in upstate New York like St. James. I think it's a disgrace. I think this governor, I hope he never shows his face again in upstate New York, although I know he will because he's a shameless actor on the political stage. Aside from the $100 million on those television ads to promote his presidential candidacy, Andrew Cuomo is providing billions of dollars of welfare and Medicaid to illegal aliens, most of them in New York City. And why are we paying for health care for illegal aliens and telling citizens of Hornell that they can't have medical care? Again, it's a disgrace. The responsibility stops at the governor's office. And I just hope at some point that Andrew Cuomo can look in a mirror and accept and look at himself and say, what have I done to the people of Hornell and all the other people in upstate New York that either don't have medical care or don't have jobs because of his cynicism towards upstate. He's a New York City guy, born and bred in Queens, and there's an old saying, you can take the boy out of Queens, but you can't take Queens out of the boy. And we're seeing that played out now with the closing of St. James and all the firings. It's really a tragic situation for Hornell.
Assemblyman Nojay, I want to thank you very much for coming on live with us this morning here on Top Story.
It's been a pleasure as always, Brian.
It's AM 1480 WLEA Hornell. Again, our thanks to Assemblyman Nojay for taking time out of his busy weekend to join us. We did learn something very important here, that the Bronx Democrat Carl Heastie will be taking over as the State Assembly Speaker next week. 9:30 now, time for ABC News here on AM 1480 WLEA Hornell.
Amid the